On this Thursday night, let's talk about more layoffs at Bell Media.
They have overseen the encrapification of local news.
Deep cuts at CTV News. What's being lost and why? Curbing car thieves. What's the plan to stop them and will it work? Battle for the ballot. The U.S. Supreme Court about to decide whether Donald Trump can run for president again. Plus, Palestinians and Jews living side by side in Israel.
It's a rare ability today to see both sides.
The Village serving as a model for peace.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. We begin with a troubling day for Canadian media. For the second time in less than a year, there has been another sweeping round of layoffs at Bell Media, leading to the cancellation of multiple CTV newscasts across the country. Parent company BCE Inc. is slashing 9% of its workforce, eliminating about 4,800 jobs. CTV's flagship public affairs program, W5, is being axed, and many local CTV newscasts have already vanished. 45 regional radio stations in BC, Ontario, Quebec, and Atlantic Canada are being sold off. Bell Media blames declining ad revenues and overregulation by the CRTC, but BC's premier today called it reprehensible corporate greed.
They bought them up like corporate vampires. They sucked the life out of them, laying off journalists. They have overseen the encrapification of local news.
Mackenzie Gray looks at the impact on jobs and on Canadian journalism in our top story tonight.
BCE is the parent company.
It's become an unsavory tradition.
Roughly 4,800 jobs.
Just 8 months after massive layoffs, Bell Media is talking about more cuts.
This is CTV News at noon.
Weekday lunch hour and 6 p.m. weekend newscasts canceled in virtually every single CTV market. 24 broadcasts in total, 90 hours of weekly local news replaced.
Boomer question.
With syndicated game shows.
I think it's quite clear Bell is moving further and further from wanting to do news, particularly local news. They're just not interested.
The company also selling off 45 radio stations, many in British Columbia, irking the premier.
The fact that they cannot find it possible, with all of their MBAs, to operate a few local news stations.
Dozens of senior journalists also laid off.
You can watch that entire documentary as well.
And W5, one of Canada's longest-running television programs, has lost its time slot.
I have a significant concern that we're watching democracy, frankly, erode right before our very eyes.
Bell's parent company declined an interview request, but told the Canadian press they blamed the 4,800 layoffs on a poor regulatory environment. Last year, they asked Canada's independent media regulator to remove any requirements to air local news. And they also want a bigger share of the $100 million Google will pay media companies through the Online News Act, a framework, sources tell Global News, Bell aggressively lobbied the federal government, including the Heritage Minister, to implement.
We hope that those big companies are going to hold their end of the bargain.
What if they don't? What if they don't?
We need to subsidize news.
BCE made $435 million in profit last quarter alone, but blamed a $40 million loss in their media division to force further slashing. A rationale that doesn't pass the smell test for this former CTV National News correspondent.
BCE has made the decision that news is not important enough of a value to let it affect our stock price.
But the stock dropped nearly 4% today as it flirts with 52-week lows. There was one positive for shareholders, though, Donna. BCE raised its dividend for the 20th straight year, this time on the back of massive layoffs.
Mackenzie, thanks. How to combat the escalation in auto theft was top of mind at a day-long summit meeting in Ottawa. The head of the RCMP calls the scale of thefts in Canada unprecedented. Federal officials say a vehicle is stolen somewhere in this country every 6 minutes, resulting in roughly $1 billion in annual losses. David Akin reports on whether the summit came up with workable plans to stop it.
There's an awful lot to talk about today.
A first-of-its-kind summit to deal with the rapid rise of car thefts, a low-risk, high-reward criminal enterprise fueled by new technologies that criminals are using to defeat high-tech anti-theft devices in modern vehicles.
In a lot of cases, these vehicles are selling for double the retail value if they were sold here in Canada.
Federal ministers used the summit to boast about what Ottawa has already done, outlawing, for example, some of the gadgets criminals use to break into cars, or giving Ontario $121 million to fight the problem, and boosting the budget of the Canada Border Services Agency by $28 million. And more funding might be on the way.
We'll have something to say, and I mentioned this to my friend Commissioner Duham, something to say about increased investments in the RCMP and their policing partners.
The Trudeau government has boosted the maximum sentence for car theft from 18 months to 2 years. But observers said that extra 6 months, it's not any deterrent.
The criminal code needs to be strengthened so that there are real consequences for vehicle thieves.
We need to see stiffer penalties.
We need to stop these criminals.
And the Prime Minister himself hinted his government would act on that.
We're also looking at further strengthening penalties for anyone who participates in auto theft.
While his ministers talk tough.
To organized crime, we say time's up.
Justin Trudeau is not worth the crime.
Federal politicians also used the forum to take veiled shots at an opposition leader, Pierre Poilievre, who is clearly getting under their skin.
So we're convening this summit because Canadians need serious action. A catchy slogan won't stop auto theft.
With lines like this:
secure our ports and lock up the car thieves.
The summit also heard that one of the most important things that can be done is to share police intelligence with non-police actors. That would be shipping companies, railways, port operators, and so on. That kind of collaboration, the experts said, is vital to stopping car theft rings. Donna.
Okay, David Akin, thank you. The city of Belleville, Ontario, has declared a state of emergency after multiple overdoses in a short span of time. The city says emergency crews responded to 17 overdoses in a 24-hour period earlier this week. 14 of them happened over 2 hours on Tuesday afternoon. Belleville's mayor warns the addiction and mental health crisis is putting an immense strain on municipal services, and he wants provincial and federal help.
It has been taxing our resources. So whether it's fire that does joint response with EMS and police, and it's a circumstance that basically I don't see a solution for it unless all governments get together.
No deaths were reported from Tuesday's overdoses, and police say there was no threat to the public, but there have been 6 more overdoses since then. The U.S. Supreme Court heard arguments today on whether former President Donald Trump should be disqualified from running again. He is appealing a Colorado Supreme Court decision to keep him off the ballot in that state's primary because he participated in an insurrection on January 6, 2021. As Jackson Proskow reports, the Supreme Court justices seem deeply skeptical that any state has the power to remove a candidate from the ballot.
Traitor! Traitor!
It's uncharted territory for the Supreme Court, a fundamental test of who can be president of the United States.
The entire world saw the insurrection happen on television.
They can't take him off the ballot for something that he's not been proven guilty of.
In December, Colorado's Supreme Court removed Donald Trump from the state's primary ballot, ruling his role in the events of January 6th disqualify him from the presidency under an anti-insurrection clause in the U.S. Constitution. The Supreme Court must decide whether that stands after hearing arguments on behalf of Colorado voters and Trump's legal team.
The reason we're here is that President Trump tried to disenfranchise 80 million Americans who voted against him, and the Constitution doesn't require that he be given another chance.
This was a riot. It was not an insurrection. The events were shameful, criminal, violent, all of those things, but it did not qualify as insurrection.
The case will be decided by the panel of 9 justices, 3 of whom Trump appointed. Even the liberal side of the bench seemed uncomfortable with the implications of upholding the Colorado case.
I think that the question that you have to confront is why a single state should decide who gets to be president of the United States.
I do think a victory for us will, in essence, mean that Donald Trump will not be on the ballot in the fall.
Ahead of the hearing, we spoke with lawyer Eric Olson, who won the original Colorado decision. He believes the court must deliver a clear ruling to determine Trump's eligibility once and for all.
It would be very calamitous if they were to say, it's not our decision, we're going to leave this to the political process. It may invite another January 6th if it's Congress rather than the courts who decide eligibility.
The man at the center of it all was not in court, but Donald Trump expressed confidence he'll be able to stay on the ballot.
You have millions of people that are out there wanting to vote, and they happen to want to vote for me.
The court must decide this case quickly, with Colorado's primary just weeks away. And for as much as the justices may try to avoid getting involved in the 2024 election, they will soon have to decide whether to take up another Trump case, determining whether the former president is immune from prosecution for his attempts to overturn the last election. Donna?
Okay, Jackson, and there was an important decision today about President Joe Biden and whether he can be prosecuted for the way he handled classified documents before he became president. Tell us about that.
Donna, the special counsel investigating Biden found that the president willfully retained classified military and national security documents, but he did not break the law and will not face any charges. The investigator noted the case is significantly different from the one involving Donald Trump and that Biden fully cooperated. But the bad news for Biden is that the investigation highlighted significant memory lapses by the 81-year-old president, saying that during the course of the year-long probe, Biden could not recall key dates, including the death of his son or the time when he was vice president. The White House responded to the special counsel, saying that raising the memory issues was not relevant to the investigation. Donna?
Right, Jackson in Washington, thanks. There has been a major shakeup of Ukraine's military command. President Volodymyr Zelensky has removed his top general, replacing him with the commander of Ukraine's ground forces. In a social media post, Zelensky thanked General Valery Zaluzhny for 2 years of defending Ukraine, but said it's time for someone new to lead with a different approach. Zelensky says he proposed the general, who is popular with troops and the public, stay on as part of the team. Ukrainian troops have struggled to make progress in the war with Russia, and tensions have mounted with the civilian leadership. Voters in Pakistan are anxiously awaiting the results of that country's 12th general election. People stood in long lines to cast ballots in an election that's been marred by violence, bombings, and the imprisonment of a popular party leader. The government suspended mobile phone service for the day, it says, over security concerns. Millions of voters inked their thumbs to mark their ballots. Preliminary results have been slow to come in, but early reports show leads for candidates from the former Prime Minister Imran Khan's party. He's the leader who's in jail. Crystal Gamansing on the turbulent state of politics in Pakistan.
With more than 120 million eligible voters, the Election Commission of Pakistan can take up to 2 weeks to declare a winner. But that time may not be necessary. This man, Nawaz Sharif, and his Pakistan Muslim League Party will likely come out on top. He's been prime minister 3 times previously. His main challenger is otherwise occupied. Imran Khan is serving jail time for corruption and breach of national security, but he is still wildly popular. Sharif was also kicked out of office and convicted of corruption, but he had his record cleared, enabling him to run again. I've been casting votes in elections since 1970, says this man. He likes the older days better, saying families now struggle to pay their bills and buy food. Pakistan is in an economic crisis and is struggling with militant violence. On Wednesday, there were 2 separate strikes outside political party campaign offices, killing at least 22 people. Fearing what would happen Election Day, the UN human rights chief appealed to authorities to ensure a free and fair vote. Citing incidents of terrorism, the Interior Ministry cut cell service for the day. Critics said it was a way for the caretaker government and indirectly the military to influence the election. Audio and video messages are popular as the nation has low literacy rates. It's part of the reason Pakistan allows parties to use symbols for voters to recognize their candidates. While we don't know the outcome yet, in the past 75 years, no prime minister has served their full 5-year term. Crystal Gamansing, Global News, London.
Eurovision and the virus that causes COVID. Coming up, a concerning rise in eye infections and the symptoms to watch for. The pandemic is behind us now, but COVID-19 is still with us, and doctors are raising the alarm about a growing number of cases of the virus affecting people's eyes. They're still learning about why and how it happens and how it can affect vision. Mike Drolet explains.
As anybody who's had viral conjunctivitis, known more commonly as pink eye, can attest, it's contagious.
It passed on really quick, like within a week the whole house had it.
Even so, Diego Bellissimo and his family weren't overly concerned, so they asked their pharmacist, who told them pink eye. But a little over a week after starting antibiotics, Diego's dad's eyes were still dark red, and the 18-year-old looked like he'd been in a fight.
Because it got infected as well, it looked like I was Rocky. I couldn't open my eyes for basically 5 days.
Concern turned to worry, and after a visit to the optometrist, they were stunned to learn the goop in their eyes came back positive for COVID.
So these are all cases that we had in one day. Look right over here.
Dr. Ken Mandadakis says at its peak he was getting 4 to 5 cases a day and is now seeing a spike in new cases. The strain is viral like traditional pink eye, but it's more aggressive than anything he's ever seen.
Unlike the other viruses that we've seen in the past, this one is causing a lot of inflammation of the eye, a lot of swelling of the tissue of the eye, blurred vision, pain, and it's causing bleeding in the white of the eye. So instead of it being a pink eye in appearance, it's actually a red eye, like a hemorrhaging type of appearance.
When asked, the Ontario Optometrists Association says it's certainly aware of an increase in serious viral eye infections, and they did post some information on their website earlier in the season. However, unless they do a broader social media campaign, information on this issue is spreading word of mouth. So optometrists telling pharmacists what to look for.
This is a patient who is obviously more advanced. We see a lot more hemorrhaging and redness of the eyes.
The treatment for these aggressive cases includes an eye wash, followed by prednisone drops, and symptoms can last for months.
Some patients were left with spots in their cornea that would then lead to glare and halos around lights that we now are treating for a longer term, like so let's say 2 to 3 months.
Diego Bellissimo is getting better, but some of the side effects haven't gone away. He says he's learned a valuable lesson. When it comes to his eyes, he's seeing his optometrist. Mike Drolet, Global News, Toronto.
Still ahead, Iceland declares a state of emergency as that volcano erupts again. Iceland is under a state of emergency after lava from a volcanic eruption damaged a key hot water pipeline. It is the third time this volcano has erupted since December, sending fountains of lava up to 80 meters high. More than 20,000 people have lost hot water and heat, and there are concerns the lava could reach a nearby power plant. A river of lava is also flowing over a road near the Blue Lagoon Spa, triggering an evacuation order at one of Iceland's most popular tourist attractions. Medalists at this summer's Paris Olympics will also take home part of a famous French monument. Each medal holds an 18-gram hexagonal chunk of iron from the Eiffel Tower. Built in 1889, some of the tower's original iron was removed and preserved during renovations in the 20th century. Just over 5,000 of the medals were made for this year's Olympic Games. Oasis of peace next, how Jews and Palestinians coexist in this Israeli village. It's hard to see much hope in the Middle East right now, but there is still a place where Israelis and Palestinians are living in peace. It's called NE Shalom, a mixed Jewish and Palestinian village, the only one of its kind about halfway between Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. It was founded more than 50 years ago based on an Old Testament prophecy that my people shall dwell in an oasis of peace. Danielle Hamamjian visited to find out what lessons can be learned there.
If you listen to them, it's not always obvious. Which child is Palestinian, which one is Jewish? And that's the whole point. Everyone here has to learn both Hebrew and Arabic. Welcome to the village of NE Shalom, or as the other half calls it, Wahat el-Salam. It means oasis of peace.
It's not a bubble. I think this is the only way we can survive here.
There are no mosques, no synagogues, no churches here. Home to 100 families, they came wanting to live alongside one another.
Key to the success of this village, and it's a strict rule, maintaining an equal number of Jewish and Palestinian families.
Founded in the 1970s, the village was the vision of a monk, Bruno Hussar. It sits on land gifted by the nearby monastery.
It was empty, no houses, no trees, nothing.
Nava Sonnenschein was one of the first to move here.
What's the secret?
To share power equally.
She now runs a school for peace that has seen tens of thousands come through its doors.
People who live here and people who graduated our programs, they have this ability, and it's a rare ability today, to see the complexity, to see both sides, to feel empathy.
But not everyone is a fan of their ethos. The School for Peace was gutted in an arson attack, and right-wing groups were behind this graffiti. Death to Arabs, it said.
Okay, you live together, bravo, but it's not something that can coexist. It's always the easy answer, you know? It cannot work. There is no way, like, have you tried?
Aya in green is Arab, Ahava in white is Jewish.
It's here, it's possible. Like, I think it's good and it helps us understand each other. It doesn't matter like if we're Jewish or Arab, we need to all be equal.
In addition to school lessons, Ahava learns Arabic in Bernadette's kitchen. She's an Arab Christian woman who's lived here for 30 years.
She's a good student. Talbi, shatra, shatra.
On the edge of the village, there's coexistence, even in death. From the cemetery, you can see the second generation of homes that were built. The waiting list to join the village is a long one on both sides. Danielle Hamamdin, Global News in the village of NE Shalom, Wahat El Salam.
And that is Global National for this Thursday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Your Canada is an aerial view of Green Bay, Newfoundland and Labrador. Thanks for watching. Neetu Garcher will be at the anchor desk tomorrow, and I will see you again on Monday. Bye-bye.